Welcome, everybody, to our Sound for Video session. Great to have you here today. Today is the 30th of April, 2023. And today we are going to take a look at some interesting things here. Sennheiser has a new system. Actually, the system has existed for a while, but they have a new digital portable version of the Sennheiser EW-DP. The EW stands for Evolution Wireless. It's sort of their branding for their wireless microphone systems. And DP is the digital portable specifically. And we'll take a closer look at that in just a minute here. And then we do have some questions that were submitted ahead of time, some relating to this microphone system and some more general. So we'll take a look at those. And for those that put your questions in the chat, we'll get back to those. There's some really good questions in there as well. So more to come on that in just a minute. All right, let's jump in, and I want to talk a little bit about, again, the Sennheiser Evolution Wireless Digital Portable. And I think it's important to understand where this product or this part of the digital Sennheiser Evolution Wireless system fits in overall, who it's for. So for a long time, there was the G3 and then the G4, and those were really aimed at primarily, I mean, you could feed the audio out of the receiver into a field recorder, but I think honestly it was mainly aimed at people that were going to send audio directly to camera. And I think it's important to understand that with the DP version of this, that's really still the aim. And in fact, if I go to the overhead camera, let's just show you the receiver itself. So here is the receiver, and here's the front right here. We'll turn it on in just a moment here, but you'll notice that the antennas are at the back. So if you consider trying to put this into a sound bag isn't really, in the traditional way at least, like this. So if this is the top of the bag here, the antennas are at the back, and that's the last place you want the antennas when you're operating from a sound bag. Really, the antennas need to be up here at the front, and they're not. And even in some of the interviews I saw with some of the with the Tobias at NAB. Tobias is the one at Sennheiser who is the product manager for this particular line. Even he said that there would be a big brother coming that would be made more for bag use. So this is not that version. This is really meant to feed audio into a camera. So I think that's the first thing to keep in mind as we're looking at this. He also said in that interview, this was an interview with Gotham Sound that I watched on YouTube. He said that the system, this particular one, is targeted at filmmakers, and I put specifically filmmakers in quotes because, again, it's made largely, I mean, its primary use case is for feeding audio into a camera. So if you have a separate sound mixer or a separate sound location sound person, could they use this? Yes, they could. They would have to. It would be kind of a weird setup. Also, the antennas are not removable, so they're not SMA connectors, so you couldn't connect an external set of antenna to this as well. So again, it's very much made for electronic news gathering, again, where you're going to feed audio directly into camera, or as he put it, high-end content creators. So people that can spend a little bit more money on their wireless system and get beyond kind of those consumer grade wireless systems, like all the 2.4 gigahertz systems that we see out there today. So from my point of view, I would call this more prosumer than anything else. It's not competing with Lectrosonics. It's not competing with sound devices, Wizicom, Zaxcom. This particular kit at least is competing more with I think Sony has some UWP systems that are made more, that are similar in this whole kind of target market. So the price on this is $699 US for the kit that comes with the receiver, with a transmitter, with the ME2 microphone, which is not, I mean, it's a fairly large microphone as far as lavaliers go. I don't think it's really made for hiding other underclothing. Again, you can see all of these signs that kind of indicate, okay, this is more for news gathering or content creators that aren't necessarily going to be hiding the lavalier microphone under clothing necessarily, or they might buy another microphone to go with it. So just to put it into context here, I think it's important to understand that. So let's just run through some of the features, and then we'll get you some audio samples here as well, and we'll show you the system itself. It is a digital UHF wireless microphone system, and you buy it for particular blocks. So it has a 56 megahertz tunable range for each particular block that they sell. So it's very much like the G4 in terms of you buy the block that works in the particular locale where you'll be doing most of your filming. So here's another indication. We're starting to see the Pro systems come out with these really, really wideband receivers, and this system is not that. 56 megahertz is definitely a usable system, especially in light of the fact that this has a 400 kilohertz channel span. That is to say, each channel only takes 400 kilohertz, which is actually quite narrow. And that's what you see with digital systems, is they can be much more precise than analog systems typically. So you can fit a lot of channels in there, but it is a 56 megahertz range overall. So in this particular case, for example, I believe it's 470 megahertz to 526 megahertz. So just as one example. So here in the United States, the unlicensed range is, I believe, 470 up to 608. So this only covers a portion of that as opposed to the entire thing plus more. It does use Bluetooth low energy to sync the receiver and transmitter, whereas on the previous, the G3 and the G4, they used infrared syncing. So you actually had to take the transmitter and hold it up to the receiver and get the infrared signal to sync the two of them, or you could manually put in the frequency that we're going to use on the transmitter itself. So this is a little bit different now. It uses Bluetooth. And that Bluetooth also means that it can be controlled via apps. So there's an iOS and Android app to control some of this as well, which is good under the right circumstances. It's turning out in these days that so many products are using mobile devices to control them that it's getting a little bit challenging, I would say. So if I'm a production mixer on a set, I don't want to have 17 different devices, or even 4 different devices, or even more than 2 devices that use apps that I have to use the app to control them. Because if I have to switch from one app to the other and then reconnect, I can't act as quickly as I need to. So that's a little bit, just something to keep in mind. Again, I don't think it's not a problem here. Once you get these set up, you don't generally need the app. The app gives you some additional information perhaps, but not absolutely critical under most circumstances. The nice thing though, this is a digital system, and it supports up to 134 decibels of dynamic range. Much, much wider than their previous generation G3 and G4. Now, also, this doesn't replace the G3, G4. I think they're still planning, the G4 at this point. I think they're still selling that. They're still planning to sell this or sell that, but this is the digital system in lieu of that. So from my point of view, if I were having to choose between the two of them, G4 or this, I think I'd just choose this. But what that also means in practical terms is, and you'll notice this on the receiver or the transmitter, let's actually just switch over to that. Switching over here. Here is the transmitter. You will notice no screen. No screen hidden here. There's a power button there. On the top, you have a mute button and a sync button. You have the port for the lavalier microphone, and you have, incidentally, a non-removable antenna. So it's a fixed antenna. But there's no screen, and there is no setting for gain on the transmitter. All of that is managed on the receiver, which is really cool. So you don't have to worry about fumbling. If you have if talent wearing the pack, the transmitter pack, you don't have to get up in their business, so to speak, to change the settings. You can control that from the receiver, which is super nice. User replaceable batteries. This is a step up that you see from a lot of the consumer systems. The consumer systems drives me mad that so many of them, I guess I should say, doesn't drive me mad. It just frustrates me that a lot of the consumer systems are using inbuilt batteries. They're not user replaceable. And once they run out, you have to charge before you can use them again. Here, they're using user replaceable batteries on the transmitter. you will note it can operate via 2 AA batteries, or there is also a proprietary lithium-ion rechargeable that Sennheiser includes one of with the kit, but you can buy an additional one. Right now I have that lithium-ion battery here in the receiver, and it can charge right here in the receiver. There's a USB-C port over here. Plug that into power, and it charges the battery inside here. In fact, I can pull that open here. This is what the lithium-ion pack looks like. The size of 2 AA batteries. And that's what we have there. Okay. In terms of powering time, so with that lithium-ion rechargeable, they say you can get up to 12 hours on the transmitter, which is really nice. I'm using AA's right here, and it definitely, I had it on for a couple of hours yesterday, and it's still, last I checked, showing 90% capacity. And these are just alkaline AA batteries, so it's doing pretty well there as well. You can get up to 7 hours on the receiver with the lithium-ion battery. And again, if you, for whatever reason, you've depleted both of your batteries and you don't have any others, you can use AA batteries in a pinch as well. Now, every digital wireless microphone system has some latency, a period of time between when the person talks. In our case, that's what we're talking about here. When somebody talks, before that audio is received at the receiver, because there is some conversion that's going on. It's converting the analog audio signal, which is captured by the microphone, into digital and then transmitting that. And in some cases, and I don't believe this is doing that, some cases it's encrypting it as well, but in this case I believe it's just sending it. 1.9 milliseconds of latency, which is really, really good for digital wireless systems. So you're not going to have a lot of sync issues here, which is good. Again, camera mountable. Let me just show you here. They have this really kind of clever cheese plate that ships with it. It's a little bit out of focus there. Get it up a little closer. So metal cheese plate with 4 magnets at each of the corners. Plus it has this shoe mount here that you can attach or detach. It comes with the Allen screw to attach it here, or you can attach that directly to the bottom of the receiver. And the nice thing about the cheese plate is that allows you to attach it to most camera rigs in whatever way you need to, whether you're using the cold shoe or something else. You can just use screws. And the nice thing is that it pops right on there. So that's now held on by magnets, which is really nice. And in fact, this is a single channel receiver, but you can also stack them. You'll notice here on the top, you have the same magnets here. So you can stack another receiver right on top of it and add an additional channel to your system. Just doing that. And the magnets are quite strong. Yeah, they're not going to just pop off under most circumstances. So you're pretty safe there. All right. Yep, so we covered the cheese plate, camera mountable. Again, it's primarily made for camera mounting, to be honest, but just so you keep that in mind. You'll notice, of course, it had 2 antennas on the receiver. Now, this is not a true diversity wireless system. This is an intelligent switching. So it does have that, if you call that, I guess it's not true diversity, but intelligent switching diversity across 2 different antennae. And we can go into another time exactly what true diversity is, but this is not quite as robust as true diversity like you see on a lot of the professional level microphone systems. There is a nice addition here. There is, and by the way, I'm operating solo today. Danny and Emma are out doing another little something. I'll meet up with them later today, but there is a headphone jack here on the side. There's a USB-C port right here and a 3.5 millimeter output. And it comes with 2 connectors, 3.5 millimeter locking. That's a locking nut there. To XLR, which is what we're using here today, sending this to my mixer. And it also comes with a 3.5 millimeter locking to 3.5 millimeter TRS, and that's what we're getting there. Okay. Let's see here. Let's check what else we got. The build is really solid metal. So whereas the G3 and the G4 had a good bit of plastic, especially on the transmitter, actually I think the receiver did as well, but these are all pretty much all metal. Although I will say on the top of the transmitter, I think this plate on the top is plastic. Although it seems pretty high grade and it's pretty well protected. All the rest of this is metal, including the door here is metal, I believe. Yeah. Feels like metal. There's the belt pack right there, or the belt clip. So that's good there. The auto scan is, I think, faster and easier to use than the G3 and G4 systems, and that's a big part of what they were trying to achieve here with the EW-DP system. I think that was a complaint that they got from a lot of customers, as people that have used consumer wireless systems where you literally just turn them on and you might have to sync them by holding down a button for just a second. Using a UHF system that's tunable provides you a massive advantage. And that massive advantage, of course, is that you can use different frequencies. So if one frequency is getting interference, you can move to another frequency. With a consumer 2.4 gigahertz system, you get no options. If there's too much other 2.4 gigahertz activity in the area where you're trying to record, your option is to turn off the other 2.4 gigahertz activity, and good luck with that. That can be really, really difficult to do. So just something to keep in mind there. But the way that they set up the scanning and the auto assigning here, it works pretty well. So so that's good. There's, again, I mentioned the app already, so there's an iOS and Android app. Let's see. Oh, they'll also be adding an XLR plug-on transmitter with 48 volts phantom power and a built-in recorder that's coming later this year. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Pretty standard here. They have a 2-year warranty, and again, the price for a kit with the receiver, single-channel receiver, a transmitter, and the ME2 lavalier microphone, as well as the cheese plate and the 2 cables, comes in at $699 US. So that's where we go. As I mentioned before, a couple of notes. It's not really sound bag friendly, so it's not made for going into a sound bag. The antennae are on the wrong side of the unit for that. The antennae are not removable, so there are no SMA connectors on the receiver. Same on the transmitter. That is not a removable antenna, so you cannot replace the antenna. And also the output, just like on the G3 and G4, it isn't really line level. So you will have to gain, if you do switch your mixer to, if you're going to feed the audio to the mixer, or even a camera that supports line level, you will probably have to add a little bit of gain at the camera to get it up to the right levels. So just something to keep in mind there. All right, with that, let's come back over to this and let's show you a couple of more things. Let me go ahead and power it on. So we just push and hold that button there, power's on, and we get some things on the screen here. So the top, across the top is the meter, and then we have our Bluetooth indicator to indicate that it's connected to the app. We have the battery status for the receiver right there. So it's showing us actually 100%, and it's showing us that we have about 7 hours, 40 minutes to go at the current rate. So that's pretty nice too, because it's actually estimating how long before you're going to need to swap out batteries, which is good. Okay, so with that, let's go ahead and power on the transmitter. And there we go. Now it's connected, and you can see we're getting level in here. I have the lavalier already connected. It's showing a good strong signal, and it's showing the battery status also of the transmitter, which is currently at 93%. Okay. Before we switch over and do anything else, let's go ahead and switch back, and let me take a look at the chat here and see what's going on. Again, I'm operating solo today, so I'm going to take a look through the chat here. So first question we got is, I wonder if it's compatible with the existing EW-D line. I don't know that. I don't have an EW-D here to test that, and my sense is that yes, it is. But if anyone knows for certain, if you could let us know in the chat, that would be really helpful. There's an EW-D line. There's also an EW-DX line. The DX adds some additional features, including encryption, but I believe it can also work with transmitters that don't support encryption from the EW-D line or from the EW-DP line, which is this one. but we need 100% confirmation. I don't know that for sure. And here's a kind of a similar question from Jonas. Do you know if it's intercompatible with the EW-DX transmitter? I think that the DX receivers are intelligent enough to know when it's getting a signal from something like this. And those are dual channel half rack receivers. So more for events and things of that nature than for location sound or production sound on a set. But they also have a 4-in-1 HE Dante receiver with antenna pass-through, which is another nice addition for the DX line. Hello from all of you. Here is Camille. We have Daniel coming in from, first, Camille from the Netherlands, Daniel from Valencia, California, Mike from Southwest Montana, Teo from Oxnard, California. I grew up in Thousand Oaks, California, just up the hill from there, and drove through Oxnard a lot. In fact, my grandparents lived in Camarillo, right by there. Mark is coming at us from Dallas. Good to have you here, Mark. Yari from Finland, cold Finland. Diesel says hello. Matt's here from Music City, USA, Nashville, Tennessee. Linda's excited to be here, and it's good to have you here, Linda. Carl asks, what mic would you normally use with the Sennheiser transmitter? So it comes with the ME2, which actually you'll hear in just a moment here. I think it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. I have a COS-11 D that also would work with this. It's wired for Sennheiser. And that's another option there, but you can choose almost any option. You can get almost any microphone terminated for the Sennheiser system. So my favorite, you can't buy them off the shelf terminated for Sennheiser, but my favorite are the Shure Twinplex, and I don't know if that's just I guess the Shure Twinplex are a little bit on the pricey side, $400, I believe, and north of there. So I assume they're figuring, well, people that buy this system probably aren't going to buy a $400 microphone because they just spent $700 for the, for an entire channel here. I don't know, but you can have them re-terminated for that. Know Your Joe is here. Good to have you here. Daniela, hello. Good to have you here. Matt, at that price, it's not competing with my Shure Accent. That said, a set that isn't as big as my Shure, but not as wimpy as my DJI mics. Yeah, so it's somewhere in between there. It's definitely more of a prosumer type thing here. All right. The Big Brother also gets integrated timecode and local recording. I believe it gets local recording. I don't know about timecode on that, Camille. Good question. And it hasn't been officially released yet. They announced it at NAB. I don't know if they finalized all of the specs for that necessarily. All right. I'm using white Eneloops with my EW-D transmitter. Works pretty well, much cheaper than the Sennheiser battery. Yeah. There we go. Camille is hoping for SpongeBob SquarePants edition. Very good. Do they have a Y cable so that you can record two persons with 2 units? Yes, they do, Matt. Good question there. So if you do have the 2 units that you stack, you can also buy a special cable that allows you to combine them into a single 3.5 millimeter. Did you say Sennheiser mentioned a portable bag receiver coming later this year? Did they say whether dual channel or single, any idea, and cost? No. They didn't say when. They just said that they're working on a Big Brother. Tobias said they're working on a Big Brother version of this. That's all he said. So he didn't say whether it was dual channel or single channel. Nothing about cost and nothing about timing. So just that they're working on it. Good question from Jonas is, can you get digital audio from the USB-C port like from the Rode Wireless Go 2s? I don't know the answer to that question. I will have to test that. I think it's just USB power. That's how the port is marked. In fact, if we take a look at it here, it's just marked as USB power. But I'm going to do a full review on this, and I'll let you know what I find out there. All right, Robert Harker says, about the reconnect problem, I have 4 Canon G30s. Its wireless feature turns camera into a hotspot with a fixed IP address, a great Canon rep at NAM. Suggested using 4 cheap cell phones, one per camera. I'm not sure I got the context on that, but that that's pretty interesting. Their portable dual channel portable receiver is EK6042 and is $3,500 slot type connector. I don't know that that one is compatible, Mark, to be honest. That I think that actually came up in the interview with Gotham Sound, and Tobias seemed to indicate that not compatible yet. They might look at doing it. In terms of the modulation, it should be able to work with it. But I think there were some practical issues in terms of making the settings on the transmitter. I'm not 100% sure on that. All right, does Sennheiser publish the max bias power? You can get Shure in microdot and then use microdot 3.5 millimeter locking, but question is, does it supply enough juice? Don't know the answer to that yet, Christopher. If you wouldn't mind looking that up and sharing here, that would be really awesome. Camille, thank you for the super chat. Appreciate that. I wonder, I prefer most of the time, instead of a lavalier mic, an ear mic from T-Bone. We did spend 2 days with Tom in Germany testing different microphones inside and outside. My husband chose AKG. Yeah, that can work as long as it's okay for it to be seen in the frame. That's and when you're presenting at an event, that's often usually okay. For video, a lot of times people don't want that. Oh, you talked about too many apps on a phone. Yeah, agreed. All right. No, it's for the UHF models, not the digital stuff. Okay, yeah. That makes sense. So just to be clear as well, this system is actually digital modulating. So it's transmitting over the UHF frequencies, but its modulation is digital. The G3 and the G4 also transmit over the UHF frequencies, but its modulation was analog. So it had to use what's called a compander. It had to compress the audio first, transmit it, and then expand it again. With this, they don't have to do the compander anymore, and that's part of the reason they can achieve a much wider dynamic range with it. So with that, let's actually turn it on and see how it sounds. So I'm going to take the lavalier microphone and we will just attach it right here. All right. Now, remember, we're going from a broadcast microphone to a lavalier microphone, and not the best lavalier microphone in the world, but so kind of set your expectations accordingly. Okay. Now I am on the Sennheiser EW-DP system with the ME2 lavalier microphone. That's what you're hearing here. And this is no processing whatsoever. It's a little quieter too. You'll notice probably a little quieter here. We're not doing any sort of compression. And let me just double check that. No compression or anything like that right now. So this is what that sounds like. And we just have the transmitter and the receiver here. Transmission distance, Sennheiser says, I believe 100 plus meters, just like the G3, G4 system. I did my initial test outdoors yesterday. I need to do more testing, but when it's line of sight, I think you can probably achieve that. When it's not line of sight, it's going to drop out before that. So if you have somebody wearing the transmitter pack on the back of their belt, then in their facing camera, you're not going to be able to transmit 100 meters. It's going to be less than that. So just something to keep in mind here. Again, for the full review, we'll have more extensive distance testing. But overall, again, from my point of view, one of the massive, massive advantages of using a system like this, in addition to its much more robust build, is that you can tune the frequency. So if you're having trouble at one frequency, you can move to a different frequency. You cannot do that with a 2.4 gigahertz system. That's just using a very, very narrow slice of spectrum around 2.4 gigahertz and auto switching between those. But once you get past a certain number of devices communicating at the same time, so if you have a Wi-Fi hotspot and you have multiple people connected to that Wi-Fi hotspot, plus you're trying to use a wireless microphone system that operates in that same little slice of spectrum, things often get a little messy there. In fact, I actually suspect from last week when I posted my review of the Rode Wireless Me, we did experience some clicking noises, and I think that actually might have been radio frequency hits. I think there might have been some other things going on because I noticed it when I did my outdoor test. It happened right when we got near my neighbor's house. And I love my neighbors. But what I have noticed about their house is they have about 700 wireless access points of different devices. Their refrigerator shows up, their wireless printers show up, all sorts of stuff show up when I go to connect to my own wireless system here, or Wi-Fi system here. So it could have been an RF hit when I was testing that last week. In any case, this is one of those things where you operate in a completely different band from Wi-Fi, and so you're not going to run into those types of issues. So, all right. We're getting a couple notes here. Christopher, wow, no bass at all on that lav. Yep. DPA 6066 with our 3.5 millimeter locking used with EWD here. No issues powering the mic. Oh, good. Thanks for sharing that. That's good to know. Matt, not the best placement for the lav, but I would like to hear that with the COS-11. I can actually probably go get one of those in just a moment here. Big difference in gain and tone when your mouth is turned directly over the mic. Like this. So here my mouth is right over the mic. Here it's off to the other side a little, or just straight ahead, while the mic is right here. Actually, you can't see that. Right here. Yeah, that's one of the things with a lav mic. If I turn this way, you're probably going to hear another substantial difference. I can move it down a bit. Going to get some static there. All right, that may make a difference there as well, but just so you can hear that. Let's add a little processing maybe. Let's, okay, there's some processing. Ooh, I'm not sure that's great processing. Let me just adjust that a little bit. Checking 1, 2, 3. Checky, check, check. 1, 2, 3. There's some EQ just pulling out a tiny bit at around 1 kilohertz. I can go extreme. Checking 1, 2, 3. Checky, check, check. 1, 2, 3. And probably less extreme there. There's that. There is a gate. I can turn off the gate. You can hear the fan now. Here's with the gate on. Here's with the compressor. And here's with the compressor turned off. And now back again with the compressor turned on. Oh yeah, 6 dB of makeup gain there, so it's going to sound a little louder. And the de-esser's off. Now the de-esser is on. She sells seashells by the seashore. Could be a little, it's really hard to do this on your own voice. But there's with the processing turned on, and here's with the processing turned off. All right, there's some samples there. Let's see what else we've got here in the chat going on. As far as I can see in the manual section, the Sennheiser Smart Assist app, the USB-C, seems to be for power only. I'm pretty sure that's the case as well. Is the interference resistance the same as that of the G4? TBD. It is, well, it has some nice, that's probably better shielding just because of the all-metal construction here on this and the receiver. But so I have not experienced a lot of interference with it. Even in the distance test, the signal dropped out when I got to a certain distance and I didn't have it line of sight. But I don't think I experienced any sort of interference with it. So that was good. The gate cuts out the high end. Oh, you know what? And I didn't turn on the camera to turn off its fan. Let's do that. There's one less fan in the room now, which is good. They may offer the MKE2 version at some point. That would sound a lot better, agreed. And for timecode, Deity have some new interesting products coming out, agreed, Jazz. They also have their what is it, the Theo wireless system that they announced but haven't shipped yet, also a UHF system. Probably a really direct competitor with this one here is how I would see that. So some interesting things there, and I believe that does have timecode built into it as well. Okay, so let's go ahead and switch on back for now. Okay, now back on the Earthworks ethos here. If you'll excuse me for just a moment, I will go get the Sanken COS-11 D and we'll connect that and see how that sounds. Be right back. Okay, Sanken COS-11 D, wired for Sennheiser. For those that haven't seen that before, that is it's not a small, it's a very robust microphone in terms of its build. Pretty hardy cable here. In fact, the ME2 is not too different from it in terms of the cable. And somebody didn't wind this very well, because it's a little bit tangled up here, just a little disappointing. Okay, there we go. All right, I'm gonna just make sure that I'm not making any noise in your ears here. So I'm gonna go ahead and power this down. There we go. Disconnect the ME2, connect the Sanken COS-11, clip that on. There we go. Now, the Sanken COS-11 and my voice have never had a great relationship. Oops, sorry about that. Just bumped the mic with my headphones there. But this is just so you can have another sample here and hear what it sounds like. So let me go ahead and power that up. Okay, yep, it's connected. I'm going to switch over. Again, Sanken COS-11 D through the EW-DP. Okay, this is the Sanken COS-11 through the EW-DP, and the lavalier mic is just down here, pinned to me. Different sound. Even I can tell that on my own voice. A little bit more bass, it sounds like. So in any case, that's what we get with the Sanken COS-11 D and the EW-DP transmitter. Actually, it's the EK. The transmitter specifically is, let's take a look at the app. In fact, we'll go to that right now. And let me just focus on that. It's out of focus. Camera's going to shake a little bit. Apologies for that. Let's take a look and see what you can do with the app here. So the transmitter is the EWD-SK. So I believe, for whoever asked that question earlier, I believe it's the same transmitter with the EWD system. The question is whether it's compatible with the EWD-X system. And apologies, I got some clipping there. I'm not sure why. It actually warns you of that, which is interesting. Also, here is the receiver. And then you do have some controls here. So the mute switch, you can actually override the mute switch. So you'll notice on the transmitter itself, there is, it's a little out of focus here because I'm focused on that, but there's a mute switch here. So now it's muted. I can actually, okay. Yeah, now we can override that. So if the talent accidentally turns that on, you can override that mute switch. This is where you set the gain, incidentally. Remember I said you do not set the gain on the transmitter, you set it here on the receiver. I don't know how that's working technically. I don't know if, for example, the transmitter has its analog preamplifier with just a tiny bit of unity gain. That feeds it in at a very low level, converts it, sends it to the receiver, and then the receiver applies the gain from there. I'm not sure if that's how it works. I suspect that's how it works. They don't say that exactly, but here's where you set that gain. And then you can also set the output level of the receiver. So in this case, we have it set to minus 25 dB. All right, you can also set the frequency here. Let's close that up. You can set it manually, you can auto scan, and then you can of course sync the transmitter as well. So I found that a little bit fiddly. And in fact, let's go back to the other microphone here. Okay, I'm back on my broadcast mic here. Let's just go ahead and do, let's do an auto scan here and see what it does. Okay, so it's going to scan and see what frequencies are available here. Now it says turn the transmitter on. So I actually had it on. Hopefully that didn't create a problem. So I'm going to go ahead and turn that back on. Okay, that's now on. And this is where I sometimes ran into some issues. Press the sync button. Okay, so we're going to press and hold the sync button until that starts flashing blue, like it is now. Let's get our transmitter and receiver antennas oriented about the same way. And this is where this wasn't as easy as I had expected, and I don't know if it's a software thing or if I'm doing something wrong, but this wasn't quite as simple as I had imagined. What I found worked a lot better was when I did the initial sync, or if I turned off the transmitter, told the app to forget all of the devices and then just start from scratch. It did it very well. Doing this resync or finding a new frequency in essence didn't work quite as smoothly. So, and you can see it's still looking and they're still not connected, which is interesting. So what if I cancel it? What happens then? You can see here, did they connect again? No, they did not. And in fact, if I come back out here, you'll see it says no link. Okay, let's come back in. It says to sync the transmitter. So I'm going to just go ahead and power everything down. This is again, and again, maybe I'm doing something wrong. I don't know for sure. So the transmitter's turned off. Now I'm powering off the receiver. It says, okay, there's nothing here. Everything's out of range. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come into this and I'm just going to go ahead and forget the device. Okay, and do the same thing in my, here in my Bluetooth settings on my phone, I'm going to also forget this device. Okay, let's go back to the app. Okay, so with the transmitter turned off, I'm going to turn the receiver on. There we go. Put the phone here. Okay, let's add devices. Let's go ahead and start. So it says to press the sync button for 3 seconds, which we did. Oh, and look, it found it right away. So that's the one we want to connect to. That's good. And we'll add this device to our setup. And we'll go ahead and let the operating system pair with the receiver. That's great. Okay. So we're good there. Now we want to add transmitter, or you would also add additional receivers here if you had additional receivers. Now we're going to look for transmitters, and we're going to go, you can do a couple things. You can look for the full range, the capability of this particular system. Again, this one is 470 to 526. Or you can do it by country. So you can look for all the available frequencies based on your country. So this is actually pretty nice from the standpoint that if you're not necessarily familiar with all of the rules in a particular country where you're filming, this will limit the range to assigning a range that is legal within that country for unlicensed use. So we're going to go ahead and just go full range and scan. All right. Now they're checking to see what the frequency are. So it suggests here 478.5 0.400. Okay, that's good. Now turn on the transmitter, which I'll do right here. Okay, the transmitter is now on. And press the sync button. So press the sync button. I know you can't see this right now. Here we go. The blue light means it's syncing. There it is. Or did it find it? No. So let's orient the antenna the same way. Okay. Looks like it's still looking. I'm going to go ahead and move it a little farther away and see if that makes a difference here. See, this is where I sometimes ran into trouble, and it looks like it's having trouble again. So, some things to work through there, either from my point of view or maybe talking with the folks at Sennheiser to see why it's not connecting. But in the meantime, let's go back to our chat and see what we've got here. All right. Fade to black. That's when I went to go get the microphone or a test pattern. Could have done either one of those. Tommy says, too bad my iPhone doesn't have a built-in XLR input for my MKH416. I would totally walk around with that. All right. Not hearing the hiss with the COS. That's interesting. Because the COS-11 D is not the quietest lavalier microphone in the world. And maybe the MKE2 is just even louder. I don't know. Is Emma in trouble for how she wound the cable on the Sanken? Possibly, but I can't be sure who wound it. It might have been me. Anyway. All right. William says, I purchased it last week, returned it because of the antenna placement, not practical for a sound bag. The Bluetooth control is useful. I'm wondering, William, if you have the same sync issues that I'm having here. I can't get it to sync every single time. It's a little bit fiddly that way. Flo says, regarding the compatibility, the responsive manual on the product page shows that all versions are compatible. Good to know. Matt says, clearly a better lav mic, referring, of course, here to the COS-11 D. And Mark agrees, yes, big difference. Linda says, I like this and will not miss the menus on the G4. Too bad about the antenna placement. Yeah, if you're really looking for a bag receiver, then stand by for updates there. Probably not something as cheap as this. Noting by cheap, I mean relatively speaking, compared to the professional wireless systems, but more to come here. William says, I compared the 500 series G4. The G4 goes about 15% farther. The new DP had a cleaner sound, about 5 to 10% when close to the receiver, but seemed to compress the audio when far away. Interesting. Yeah, thanks for that, William. Appreciate that input. COS-11 WireGate will be deducted from Emma's wages. No, we'll just have a lesson. And again, I don't know that it was her. It might have been me. Mark says, I use the COS-11 with my tentacle sync lavs. They're not sure TL48s, but they're good enough that I can fix it in post. I agree. The thing with the Sanken is that they are quite, you can EQ them and get some nice results for sure. Is there an iPad app too? I want to move all my production apps to my iPad Pro. Good question. It's an iOS app. I'll have to check that, Linda. I don't know the answer to that right off the top of my head. Okay. I hope you haven't turned your neighbor's fridge off. I haven't. No, I haven't. No, I just noticed that when I do a search for Wi-Fi connection spots, I notice probably 15 things coming from their house. Actually, Linda, this is a good point. Bluetooth is either a blessing or a problem. Is Bluetooth the only way to configure? No, the receiver has all of the menus as well. In fact, we can show you that here. If If I pull that up, you can come into the menus, and they're actually, let me refocus that. There we go, a little easier to read there. So you can set the gain for the transmitter, you've got your output level, headphone, and you can just pop into the menu and adjust things like that. Back into the menu. We have our mute switch, auto scan. You can set your channel and frequency, the brightness of the screen, and you can reset things all together. So it's really pretty easy to use. Yeah, and this is way easier to use than the G3 or G4 menus from my recollection. I had a G3 originally that I gave away. But this is a lot easier to work with than that. All right. Carl says, did you try looking at the transmitter on a tiny SA? Sometimes it helps to visualize and double guess when setting frequencies. I'm not entirely sure, Carl, what that means. I had the exact same problem on the app, connection problems. Okay. I think the app needs a little work, honestly. The system itself worked nicely. The app probably needs a little work. All right. Yeah, you press and hold for 3 seconds, then the blue light starts flashing, meaning it's looking to sync. Press the sync button a little longer. Okay, well, let's try that. So I'm going to come back over to here. They're still not connected. Let me press the sync button here on the transmitter first, get it above. Okay, so you can see that's flashing now. Press and hold here for 3 seconds. All right, and it's going to try to connect to the app. Let's see. Again, these are out of focus because these are in focus, but yeah, I don't think it's a matter of pressing the button longer. I don't think. Let's try again. Holding it longer just turned, oh, wait. Now it's flashing blue again. Well, we'll let that go and see what happens. Last time it did not end up making it work. All right, we do have to go back and let's take a look. We did have some questions that were submitted ahead of time, and I want to make sure we get to those. We're running out of time here, so let me just hop on over to this. First question from Hugh. How does a pair of the Sennheiser EW-DP compare to Sony's UWP dual-channel receiver with 2 transmitters, or a pair of Sennheiser's own AVX? I think those are 3 different systems. Number 1, AVX is meant for videographers and to be as simple as possible. Literally, pretty much turn it on. If the transmitter and the receiver are not synced, sync them by pressing and holding a button, and it does that pretty quickly and easily, and then go. That's pretty much it. I think you can set the input level too, but no screens, no menus, no nothing. So it's meant to be super, super simple. It does not use UHF frequency. It's actually, I believe, it's at 1900 megahertz, I believe, or 1.9 gigahertz. So that's actually a frequency that's used, traditionally was used by cordless phones. At least here in the United States. I don't know if there are different versions for different parts of the world, but that's what the Sennheiser AVX does. AVX is pretty good if you want something super simple. I think it's a good choice. I would say that's more like it's similar to the consumer systems we see that are now 2.4 gigahertz, except it uses a different frequency. It's more expensive, but I think it's a little bit better built as well. Like the transmitters are more robust than you'll find on a lot of those consumer systems. The Sony has a dual channel receiver. So the receiver by its nature is 2-channel. It comes that way, and I think it's a little bit bigger than the receiver on the UWP, but not by much. And so it's probably a little bit more compact. It's also more expensive, as I recall. At least the one that I saw. There are a bunch of different receivers for that system. But I I believe it was more expensive than this entire kit here for just the receiver. So a little bit more expensive. And also one of the things about the Sony systems that I don't love is that they use a proprietary pinout for their lavalier microphones. So getting other lavalier microphones in there, you typically have to have them custom terminated, which is a little bit of a pain. But unless you're just going to stick with the Sony lavaliers, which is fine. That's one thing. And then the EW-DP, you have to add an additional receiver and transmitter if you want to go dual channel. So the receiver here, the DP, is just a single channel receiver. So those are some of the differences, kind of off the, at least superficial differences there. Next question from Mark. Can you please recommend, this is completely related to some, not to the same thing at all. Can you please recommend an omnidirectional XLR microphone to place in the middle of and record musicians standing in a circle? I don't know if any of you have done something like that. There are plenty of omnidirectional microphones out there. The first one that comes to my mind that I have on hand is the AKG C414. That's one option. There are lots of other studio condenser microphones with multiple patterns. The Neumann U87 also has an omnidirectional setting on it. You might want more of a small diaphragm condenser, in which case I think Neumann makes a, and again, I don't know what your budget is, Mark, for this. Neumann makes some small diaphragm condenser microphones with omnidirectional polar patterns as well, which are worth looking at. Schoeps has their Colette system, has Colette preamplifier has an omnidirectional capsule option. Again, these are all kind of more at the professional end of the spectrum. Audio-Technica has their 4053B is actually a hypercardioid capsule, but you can also get an omnidirectional capsule for that system. There is those are some of the first ones that come off the top of my mind. If anyone has any other recommendations, please drop those in the chat here. All right, here we have another question back to the UWP system here. Would this be a good complement to a field recorder or better suited for in-camera recording? I will say it is primarily made for in-camera recording. How does it compare to an analog G4 or digital AVX transmission system, and how does convenience balance with quality of recording? AVX sounds fantastic in my experience. So it's also a digital system. I think it sounded about the same to me. So I don't think there's a huge difference in audio quality. AVX is not tunable like the DP is here. So that's the difference. We've already covered some of the differences with the G4, so hopefully those were helpful for you. Then going on, I see EW-DP is sold in variants with fairly narrow frequency bands. Is the choice going to limit where you can legally use it as much as the G4? Does it make sense for someone who travels a lot and wishes to record in different states or countries? All right. In different countries, it's going to have the same challenges that the G4 did and does have, and that is you're going to have to buy a band that will work in all of the places you want to use it. So that same challenge applies here. Again, it's not until you get into the more expensive, latest generation Pro wireless systems that have the really, really wide tunable ranges. So that is going to be a challenge here still as well. Okay, let's go back here and take another look at the chat and see where we're at. Okay. Okay, here is some advice here. I had a sync issue once after forgetting the transmitter in the Bluetooth settings and then re-adding it. It never broke. Make sure to follow the SHNC manual. Turn things off how it tells you to. Okay, we'll keep working with that. Wondering if an SMA mod is possible on the receiver. Sure, anything's possible. I know people definitely did that with the G3 and probably the G4. Only single channel, no 32-bit safety recording. It's 2023. Look at the Deity Theos wireless, except nobody has used the Deity Theos wireless. So despite all the promises, we have yet to see how well that works. I see what you're saying. The wide dynamic range is going to make it so I'm not too worried about the dynamic range at all. So I don't know that 32-bit safety is required, but recording would be nice. And that will be available on the plug-on transmitter. The reason they don't put it in the lavalier transmitter is probably because of patent infringement risk. So Zaxcom still owns the patent on that in the United States. So that's probably why they don't have it here. It's possible that Deity will be licensing that technology from Zaxcom. They are the only company that has licensed any of Zaxcom's patents to date, as far as I'm aware. So it could be that that's what Deity is doing here. Sennheiser might have improved it by not letting you proceed with a looking for a new frequency or doing the auto sync. If the device which should be off is still on while you're attempting to frequency sweep, that's actually not a bad idea. Looks nice and clean. My old eyes can read that. Yeah, the screen is nice. I will say that for sure. Actually did that on a 500 G4 receiver. Works great. Might work on these, but I'm holding out to see what they release later on. Yago, you said the receiver antennas are not removable. The transmitter ones are? No, the transmitter antenna is also not removable. It's also fixed. In fact, I can show you a close-up here. Let's do that. Move the phone. Try not to pull on that. So this is not, there's no sort of way, not user replaceable, it looks like. So fixed, just like the G3 and G4 were. Robert, do you re-terminate your lav mics? I do not. I send them out if I need to have them redone. And in many cases, I use microdot when I can. All right. Let's see. Mark says for Mark L, I found the Aston Spirit is a really nice multi-pattern mic with a great sound. It has omnipolar pattern selector that may work great in the situation you describe. Christopher says, in the Gotham interview at NAB, so Gotham Sound interviewing Tobias at Sennheiser, Andrew... Oh, you're talking about the Gotham interview with Deity, Andrew at Deity, dodged the question about recording and transmit in the US, suggesting that they may not be licensing it. So yeah, I think they're probably still working that out. I think the trick with licensing is that Zaxcom can charge whatever they choose to charge. And so that can really change the price of a product if every single unit has to be, there's a fee for licensing a particular patented technology for every single copy that's sold. So the product company then has to build that into the cost, and that gets passed along to the customers, of course. So yeah, there's some definite downsides doing that. So, all right, everybody, I think we've got everything that we can cover for today. We're a little over time. Danny's not here to stop us, but I do need to get to some other things, including going on this review of the Sennheiser DP here. So get out there, make some great sound, and we will talk to you again next week. Take care, everybody.